Ladies and gentlemen, James Lane here, and in the 45th episode of the American Reveille Podcast, I'm going to give you a big old Georgia Suitcase-Gate update. And on top of that, speaking of Georgia, we're going to get into the Senate runoff, but more specifically, we're going to talk about the demon, the wolf in sheep's clothing, Raphael Warnock, and how I think he might just be the devil. On top of that, we're going to get into the always touchy subject of more evidence basically proving once again that the left hates the Jews. Stay tuned, folks. Ladies and gentlemen, James Lane here. It is Monday, December 7th, the day before Safe Harbor Day. Ooh. Scary, isn't it, guys? Well, you shouldn't be scared. If you caught my last video, you'll know why December 8th and December 14th actually don't mean anything at all in relation to what we're trying to do here. If you didn't catch that, at the end of this video, all right, there's going to be a little thing that's going to appear in the lower left corner of this video. It'll show a link to another video, basically, and that will be the video I'm talking about right now, ladies and gentlemen, where I detail a report, basically, a legal analysis that was done by a watchdog group on election integrity, and it explains exactly why we shouldn't actually be worried, folks. So I know a lot of people have a very uncomfortable feeling in the pit of their stomach, but folks, I'm expecting a crazy week. All right. And you should too. We seized voting machines over the weekend. I believe it was 22 of them. We have cases moving forward all over the country. More instances of fraud, more people stepping up, over 1,000 sworn affidavits. I know. Rudy's got COVID. I get it. But they'll give him the same crap they gave Trump, that Regeneron or whatever, that antibody cocktail, and he'll be doing backflips and getting pranked by Borat in no time, ladies and gentlemen. So don't worry too much. We've got some pretty amazing lawyers. I don't know if you've ever heard Jenna Ellis talk, but she's absolutely terrifying. So I'm sure Rudy Giuliani having COVID isn't going to necessarily affect anything. I'm sure Jenna Ellis and her team can handle everything just fine. Anyway, how you guys doing? Happy Monday. We got a big week ahead of us, obviously. We have, the holidays coming up, obviously. We have all these crazy orders going across the country, people locking down their states because they're absolutely insane. We're going to spend some time in this episode actually talking about the Democrats and the things that they hate, because the end of this podcast, I sectioned it out so at the end we'd get to talk about what the left really believes, and I thought that touching upon their anti-Semitism would be a good close to this, because in the middle I spend some time talking about Mr. Raphael Warnock the Warlock, I call him, because he's probably the Antichrist. When I read about this guy and we talk about this guy, that's supposedly, possibly going to win and tip the balance of the Senate by winning the Georgia Senate seat. This guy is an absolute nutcase, ladies and gentlemen. And when you hear about him, you're going to be like, what in the hell are these people voting for? I get it. I know. Oh, my God. I got to go to work in just a few hours. I'm tired, ladies and gentlemen. I put out a lot of good stuff this weekend. I had a lot of finals to study for. I've got some high-level statistics finals that are just, you don't want to do these things. Trust me. I want nothing more than to take a nice little nap in the corner. But folks, I have a duty. There's a purpose to me being here, just like there's a purpose to you being here. And right now I'm being tapped. It's my purpose. It's my goal. It's my objective. It's my duty to provide you the best information, the best content, the best entertainment, the best explanations that anybody on the internet has to offer. I might not have any big name sponsors, folks. I might not be Dan Bongino, and I love him, respect him to death. No offense to him or anybody else. I might not be any of these guys, and I don't have Fox News backing me. I don't have even some of the littler guys, OANN or Newsmax. I don't have any of these folks backing me or sponsoring me. I don't have any big companies behind me. I don't have any giant name sponsors pouring money in. It's just me. I got a couple people helping out that really are great patriots wanting to make a difference, and I appreciate them. But honestly, we are doing this through word of mouth. We're doing it through quality. People see our vision. They see what we're putting out. They resonate with it. They feel. You guys feel it. I feel it. I feel it, definitely. And I know you guys feel it. This community, this building between us, this shared knowledge, this amazing thing that's happening with the American Reveille. And I'm going to call it the American Reveille movement, the tidal wave that's going to sweep across. The more and more people just keep waking up, and I just think it's absolutely amazing. And I want to thank every single one of you for being a part of it. And if you're new around here, welcome. We've shot up a ton on all of the different social media platforms, even on YouTube, hundreds and hundreds of subscribers. We just hit 12,000 fans on Parler today. Amazing stuff, guys. So I know there's going to be a lot of new folks floating around and more folks after that, and folks that have been here since the beginning. All right. I appreciate all of you. I appreciate all of you. And I know I used to answer every single comment, but now I'm getting thousands and thousands of comments. So until I get to a point where I actually make some money doing this podcast somehow, not that I want to make money off you guys. That's not anything of what I want to do. But when I can somehow bring a little bit of cash flow in, then I can hire some assistants, some folks to take some of the hours of work off of me that I'm already doing after I'm coming home from my regular job. And then that will free up more time for me to get into the comments more and back into being a lot more responsive. Unfortunately, I'm wearing many, many hats right now, and I really appreciate you guys understanding. It's going to be an interesting process as this thing grows, but we are expanding rapidly, and I really believe we are placing ourselves in an amazing position where we'll actually get to a point where we can make a difference, where we can actually unite people on the right, where we can help people, where we could raise money, we could help businesses, we could do stuff for the suffering community that is basically at the mercy of the hands of their Democrat tyrants. There are many states out here. I know a lot of us are in blue states, unfortunately, and a lot of us are not. They're in, we'll call it free states. We'll call it red states. They're in Texas. They're not getting trampled by the Newstroms, the Insleys, the Whitmers, the Lightfoots, the DiBlasios, the Cuomos of this country. Well, we have to keep it from coming to you. We have to keep it from spreading any further. And we have to help our fellow patriots no matter how we can. And for me, the way I'm going to do that is I'm going to turn the American Reveille into a large, large operation. I'm going to keep it true to the core values that I've always told you guys. No big left-wing sponsorships, no supporting from big sponsors over the small mom and pop shops, always supporting small business, always supporting veterans. We support Second Amendment rights. We support Kyle Rittenhouse. Black Rifle Coffee isn't coming out and saying that, huh? All of these other places, they're protecting themselves. But me, I want to stay true to my core values so that you guys trust me and trust this movement, this company, this organization, this operation as it grows into something spectacular, and that you trust that I will use it to give back as much as we put in. I want to give back. I want to be able to do something spectacular for our brothers and sisters during this time. And I've got a lot of plans for that and a lot of announcements coming soon. So I'm not going to jibber jabber too long. It is the podcast. So I do like to talk. I do like to get a little bit out there. It is Monday morning if you're getting your coffee, or you might be listening to this later in the night or a couple days later or whatever. But if it's Monday morning for you, good morning. I hope you had a great weekend. I hope you did something enjoyable. I hope you took care of yourself for a little bit. I hope you're fresh. I hope you're ready to conquer the week. I hope you've been preparing, getting ready, keeping your eyes open, and being vigilant for the times that are coming. I don't necessarily believe that we're headed towards some large conflict, folks. But I do believe we could be headed towards some large conflict. I believe we are in a different time. If there is a conflict, it will be very different. I promise you, there is no 19-year-old video game playing kid. Nothing against video games. I'm just making a reference, just saying something. There's no 19-year-old kid that's going to march 47 miles with a musket to go to the next town, okay? I'm sorry, it's not happening. They'll be out of breath in 5 minutes, all right? It'll be a mixture of guerrilla tactics, cyber attacks, infrastructure, warfare, riots, psychological tactics, strategy, confusion tactics, things like that. Terrorism, domestic terrorism, stuff like that. It's not going to be lining up the chess pieces and firing muskets, ladies and gentlemen. So get that out of your head first off. But there are still ways to do this. And like I've said in previous podcasts, previous things, the releasing the Kraken 3, all of that, I spoke about how I believe that if Trump does this, the best path is to have the votes disqualified. He still wins through an electoral landslide. That kind of negates a lot of the craziness, but we'll still have violence. We'll still have uprising. And Trump hasn't used the Insurrection Act. He got rid of Defense Secretary Esper. All right. He put him to the wayside, put his guy in the right place. All right, folks, Esper was the one that said he wouldn't use troops on our cities if we needed our troops there to secure peace. So he got rid of Esper. So if this violence breaks out, I think Trump is fully prepared to use the Insurrection Act and fix the problem. All right, ladies and gentlemen. So that's kind of where I stand with that. Like I said, I think we're really gonna have some crazy developments this week, and keep your eyes open on at the James Lane on Parler, the American Reveille Parler site. I do constant updates all day with different news stories, different things I see, pertinent information that I feel you should know. That's also where I release the podcast. I release our videos, articles that come out from all of our different contributors and writers at the James Lane on Parler. I basically sworn off most of the other social medias, and we are going to build our empire there. Folks, I really think that we have seen some amazing evidence over the weekend. And with the amount of evidence that we've seen and the amount of insubordination we've seen from some of these judges, we've also seen a shift in these cases moving into the correct direction. We saw Alito move up certain hearings over the weekend. We see these cases moving ever closer to the Supreme Court. And remember, the Supreme Court is going to rule on constitutionality. And there's hundreds of thousands of cases now of unconstitutionality in this voting process. So I'm pretty confident these historic times are going to garner historic results. It's going to be very crazy, ladies and gentlemen. It's going to be interesting. But man, oh man, guys, if you want to take the emotion out of it for a second, and you want to take the heartache and the hardship for some people out of it for a second, and just look at it from a unbiased perspective, an unemotional perspective, this is one hell of a movie, ladies and gentlemen. And I'm proud to be a part of it and delivering a positive message during this time, a message that brings us together on the right and focuses us in the right direction. And right now, I want to focus on Georgia. So, folks, Georgia, this is from Jim Hoft, Gateway Pundit, all right? Breaking exclusive, third suspect from State Farm Center suitcase scandal. This is the Suitcase-Gate I'm talking about. Identified as Ralph Jones Sr., who was in the news for shady deal with Atlanta Mayor Keisha Bottoms. Here we go. Just wait till you hear about this piece of work. And I know there's more, but this article here kind of does a nice overview over what's happened over the last few days. So we're going to read through it. All right. And we're going to go down a couple more articles. We're going to put some stuff together. I did a lot of research to kind of put these articles together in the right order of which I think you'll get a really good point, and you'll kind of understand how everything here kind of flows and connects. It's really crazy stuff that's been going on, ladies and gentlemen. Look at this. We've reported numerous times on events in Georgia on election night at the State Farm Arena in Atlanta. We've now uncovered more on the incident that exemplifies the 2020 election in Georgia. Look at this guy right here, Mr. Red. All right. That guy looks like the bouncer at like a cheap casino. Like you ever go to like, you drive to like the Indian reservation and not the good casino, but it's like the casino that looks like, I don't know, everybody inside is smoking 6 cigarettes at the same time. That's what he looks like. Like he's one of the $6 an hour security guards there. Nothing wrong with being a $6 an hour security guard, by the way. It just sucks that it's $6 job and that you, anyway, you know what? I'm not going to go on a tangent with that. I've already put my foot in my mouth. Let's keep going. On election night, we were told that voting stopped in Georgia's State Farm Arena due to a water main break. President Trump was way ahead in the election at the time, but a couple days later, we uncovered that the water main break never happened. First, an attorney in the Atlanta area asked for information related to the event via a Freedom of Information request, and he shared with us that the only item he received was a couple of text messages related to the event. Ooh, what a mystery. After posting this, we found out that the water department in Atlanta never even received a call regarding the water main break. It was a scam. Look, there's that Ruby Freeman person that they were talking about, Ruby Freeman. There's Shay Moss, right? Look, next it was uncovered that a mother and daughter team, Lucy Freeman and her daughter Shay Ross, there's Ruby Freeman and Shay Ross. I don't know who Lucy is. This says Ruby right here. I believe it was Ruby, if I remember correctly from all the other articles. I think that might be a typo. Unless her real name's Lucy and then she goes by Ruby, but we're not doing an Ancestry.com test here, so let's keep going. Stuck around after sending everyone home and started running ballots through the tabulators. Ballots were pulled out from under a table that were previously covered up and processed with no Republican observers. The mother-daughter team have become infamous in the annals of voter corruption. And if you guys remember, a couple videos ago, I went over all of the surveillance video showing these people pull the suitcase out from, the 4 different suitcases out from underneath a black tableclothed table after the Republicans observers were removed from the area. It's crazy stuff, folks. Look at this. Crooked Georgia election supervisor filmed pulling out suitcases of ballots, see, beneath the table. It's Ruby's daughter. Yes, see, I was right. It is Ruby Freeman. Jim Hoft, you got a typo here. Sorry, brother. Didn't mean to expose you on the air. On Sunday night, we uncovered another observation of events that night. One of the other individuals who stuck around moved from his regular station and moved to another cube where he held numerous calls with someone as the ballot counting went on. Yakov Applebaum at the Illustrated Primer, I can't believe I said that name right, by the way, points out where this mysterious man in red placed himself. Look at all this. They even put together a crazy chart here. So this is the new location of the man in red during the special count. He went to this back corner right here. All right. Ballots taken out of the tray by Shay and scanned by Ruby have already been pre-processed and removed from the envelopes. They're right there. Typical ballot pre-processing usually takes about 30 seconds. 1, take a ballot envelope. 2, open the envelope. 3, unfold the ballot and inspect it. 4, place the ballot flat on a pile for scanning. That's supposed to take place at these tables right here that are set up. All right. This shows the cast of characters, 2 phone calls, the different boxes, and this is the infamous table in the middle where they rolled that table in, by the way, and then 4 suitcases were mysteriously rolled out. So let's take a look. According to the composite, the man in red makes 2 phone calls on election night at 10:58 p.m., which then triggers the removal of the ballot cases. And by the way, really quick, for those who are just listening, I was just going over this composite kind of chart that they made from the CCTV cameras, and it just shows the room and the outlay, and I kind of went over where everybody was standing and stuff. But what I'm about to read kind of talks about it a little bit, so you'll get a better idea. He makes 2 phone calls, all right, 10:58 p.m., which then triggers the removal of the ballot cases from under the table covered in black material. It's a tablecloth. Within a couple minutes, I'm sorry, I had to. It's covered in black material. That could mean like the stuff they make the creature venom out of or something, or those black ooze creatures from the movie Phantoms back in the 90s. It could be anything. I don't know what black material means, but I do know what a tablecloth is, and that looks like a black tablecloth. So within a couple minutes, 4 boxes of ballots are wheeled out from under the table. Interesting. We now believe the man taking the calls and organizing the massive suitcase scandal that night is Ralph Jones. Ralph Jones is the registrations chief at Fulton County Government. Oh, he only 17 people like him on LinkedIn. He's a very lonely guy here on LinkedIn. 17 connections. Even the guy that's like spamming inboxes with like, hi, I'm a financial investor. Do you want me to help your business? Stop messaging me on LinkedIn. Even that guy's got like 6,000 connections. This guy's 17. Nobody likes him. We have video of Ralph Jones taking time out to speak with Ruby Freeman while she was filmed counting ballots. Oh, look at that. And he's not even following all those Democrats. Oh, not that I give a crap about masks and wearing them like that, but honestly, they always talk that game about wearing your mask properly, and this guy doesn't even have it up above his nose. Oh, here's the video of Ralph and Ruby Freeman that we're not going to watch. Ralph Jones Jr. has his own consulting firm. He did work for Mayor Keisha Lance Bottoms. Mayor Bottoms paid Ralph Jones Jr.'s consulting firm $3,600 during last year's runoff. And then she won her runoff. And he writes, what a great investment. And that is a good investment. If you pay this guy and you win your election, hey, why not, right? The AJC, though, they reported on Keisha and Ralph back in 2018. And this is what they said. According to records obtained by Channel 2 Action News, the Atlanta Journal Constitution, the campaign. What does that say? Yeah, it does say Constitution. All right. According to records obtained by Channel 2 Action News and the Atlanta Journal-Constitution. There we go. AJC, the Atlanta Journal-Constitution. I was wondering. The campaign paid more than $3,600 to R.J. Mays Consulting, whose registered agent is Ralph Jones Sr., registration chief of the county's election department. That is very conflicty of interesty, don't you think, ladies and gentlemen? I feel like if we were to do something like that at a regular 9 to 5, they would fire us and put us in jail. The filings raise questions about potential conflicts of interest and what experts call an alarming lack of separation between a top election employee and an active political campaign. Really? Go figure. And Ralph's son, Ralph Jones Jr., was also Keisha's online social media director. Talk about keeping it in the family, keeping it in the political dynasty, right? All these different politicians and families, they're all intermingled with each other. They all work at the same damn offices. It's ridiculous. They also said they have a huge update coming on this guy. So when the Gateway Pundit releases more about Ralph over here, Mr. Ralph Jones Sr. and his son Ralph Jones Jr. and this whole other Suitcase-Gate scandal, which I'm sure there'll be more news on today because everything's already earth-shattering. I mean, you take this coupled with seizing of these different machines, the Dominion machines, and having forensic audits done and signature verifications in some of the places. I mean, we've got so much going on. So when I get an update on this, I promise you, I will get it to you. But we're not done yet. We're not done talking about Georgia because I want to go back just for a second and talk a little bit here about Ruby. Miss Ruby and her daughter, Shay. Her daughter, Shay Ross. Look at this. This is again from the Gateway Pundit. All right. Timing of large Georgia ballot dump. This is from the other day. This is before this article that I just went through came out. All right. Timing of large Georgia ballot dump for Biden appears to coincide with the timing of the mother-daughter duo's election fraud scam. Do you guys remember? on election night when all of those votes came in all of a sudden in the middle of the night. The hundreds of thousands of votes came in the middle of the night. They had big voting dump spikes in Fulton County that night. And they happened to have happened at the same time that this happened. Oh, that's a coincidence. Okay, yeah, my ass. Right. Right. You know, some conspiracy type things I look at and I go, okay, this is ridiculous. And then some things I look at and I go, you know, they say lightning doesn't strike twice, but, you know, anyway. Jenna Ellis from the Trump team and Eric Trump both tweeted out charts showing the timing of a large data dump for Joe Biden. It's the same time that the mother and daughter duo in Atlanta began messing with the ballots in secret. Jenna Ellis tweeted the following. Look at this picture from the Georgia video. It's not coming up for some reason, whatever. The huge spike for Biden during the same time the suitcases of ballots started to be scanned. Fraud, Jenna Ellis says. Her tweet shows an entry recorded with 225,000 votes for Biden, with less than 100,000 for President Trump. This is when a major portion of the steal took place in Georgia, which is about the same time that the mother-daughter team of Trump haters kicked all Republicans out of the ballot counting room in Atlanta and started tabulating votes on their own after grabbing ballots out from underneath the table, ladies and gentlemen. I don't know about you, but I would say that that's not very kosher, folks. That's not kosher at all. With all of this overwhelming evidence, don't you think it's about time that Georgia had its election overturned? I don't think that's short of crazy. I just think that nobody's been alive since the last time something crazy like this happened. And the closest thing we've ever gotten to something like this is Rutherford B. Hayes, 1876. And I've talked about this in previous podcasts and videos. Nobody's alive. Everybody's dead that went through crazy stuff. So now we're all walking around like, nah, this stuff couldn't happen. But man, once in a while, the dice roll and they land on snake eyes and something crazy happens. And I believe that 2020 is the year of the crazy snake-eyed roll. Oh yeah, that was so stupid, and I loved every second of doing it. Timing of large Georgia ballot dump, like I just said, it appeared to coincide with the mother-daughter team. That's also that's also just, it can't be. You know, anyway, we need to actually move on from that because it just can't be. There's nothing else to talk about with that. I've tried to think about it from every angle, right? I've tried to look at it, folks, and I'm sure it hurts your head, too, to think about. Oh, well, maybe it's a coincidence, but when you look at it from every angle, it just lines up. It's not, and it's not based on, intuition. There's evidence. There's hard evidence. There's videotape evidence. There's timestamps. There's statistical evidence that matches up. So you really can't say anything but, that looks mighty incriminating, ladies and gentlemen. And like we read in the first article there's supposed to be more news about this coming out extremely soon. But in the meantime, Trump's taken the initiative and done exactly what I think he should do. Trump campaign files lawsuit to overturn the fraudulent election in Georgia. And bravo, Mr. President, bravo. Folks, I want to get through this one, too, for you. The Trump campaign filed a lawsuit in Georgia on Friday, claiming the election process was overwhelmed with fraud and irregularities, and a new election should be ordered immediately. The lawsuit claims over 300,000 ballots were processed illegally, and they were, and we've seen proof and more proof till our eyes are bleeding, our ears are bleeding, and we are unconscious on the floor, unconscious, laying in a pile of political excrement because we can't make sense of why the left says we have no evidence when it's right in front of their face. But I know the secret, and you know the secret too, and the secret is they're morons. I think we're good there. We can leave it there. I'm sure you all agree. They're morons. Anyway, look at this. President Donald Trump has filed suit in Georgia, claiming the election process was filled with significant systemic misconduct, fraud, and other irregularities, resulting in many thousands of illegal votes being cast and counted. The suit was filed in Georgia on Friday, ladies and gentlemen, Friday the 4th, on behalf of Trump and David Schaefer, a presidential elector pledged to the president. The suit named Georgia Secretary of State Brad Raffensperger and a slew of local election officials. I just had to do that. It is asking the court to prevent certification of the results and order a new presidential election, which they should. Folks, the reality of this happening is not far-fetched. We have to keep our eyes open this week, folks. We have to keep our eyes open on the courts because chess moves have happened and the actions are going to flow through now. If anybody's ever played any of those turn-based strategy video games like the Civilization games, some people like to play those. They're like chess, but digital. You know what it's like waiting for your turn and then watching other people take their actions and other things react upon other actions that are taken. Basically moves on the chessboard, making a cause and effect. You move a piece somewhere, you move something in this game somewhere, and it causes the enemy or the friendly or whoever to move or do something based upon your actions. And then you're going to react based upon their actions, ladies and gentlemen. So the moves have been made. That's what I'm trying to get at. The moves have been made. All right. And now we're going to see the trickle down of the effect, the actions, the decisions are going to start rolling out this week. And I have a feeling, like I've been saying, we may actually see a state this week. Flip right back to Trump. And that's when the Democrats are going to start screaming, coup! They called it months ago. They're prepared to do it. But, ladies and gentlemen, we've been expecting this, and it could happen this week. It could happen in a few weeks, because like I said, the December 8th and December 14th dates are actually much more flexible than people realized. And like I said before, wait till the end of this video. There will be a little placard that comes up in the lower right-hand corner with a link to the latest video I did on that watchdog report, which explains it very, very well. So speaking of Georgia, we've got to talk about the Senate runoffs, but I'm going to do it a little differently. I'm not going to talk about Linwood and whether he wants people to vote or boycott it, or I'm not going to talk about Trump promoting people to vote. I'm not going to talk about Purdue talking crap about Trump or whether we should like Purdue or not Purdue or anything. I want to focus on a diabolical creature, all right, a wicked, taloned, hooved, and winged foe that has weaseled his way not only into religion, but is now trying to weasel his way into the sacred halls of our state's legislature. And I'm talking about the just disgusting, almost evil, probably evil, more than almost, definitely evil, Raphael Warnock. Warnock the warlock. Warnock the warlock, the diabolical Raphael Warnock, running for state senator in Georgia. All right. We need to talk about him for a minute. And I wanted to start, all right, with this op-ed that I found on the Western Journal by David Clausen. All right. It came out yesterday on the 6th, and it's actually very, very, very good. It explains a lot. That's actually exactly what he looks like without a mask, just a giant gaping hole of a face where a demon's mouth is just that. Well, maybe not. Anyway, we're going to talk about this man. So let's start with this. Warnock professes to be a Christian, but look what he actually believes. That's what I want to talk about first. I want to give a good overview on who Warnock the Warlock really is. Old Warnie the Warlock. All right, guys, it's very important to understand that this guy is like everything bad the Bible says. All right. And now I'm not saying anything bad against certain groups of people or anything like that. I'm just saying that people have the right to believe what they believe in their religious practice. Plain and simple. I'm sorry. Freedom of religion, folks. Let's read about this guy. The eyes of the political world are on Georgia, where a pair of runoff Senate races will decide control of the U.S. Senate for the 117th Congress. Republican Senators David Perdue and Kelly Loeffler. I learned the hard way over the weekend that Loeffler spells Loeffler and not Loeffler. So, Kelly, I do apologize. David Perdue and Kelly Loeffler. They're running for re-election against Jon Ossoff and the Reverend Raphael Warnock. And I think he just became a reverend because it sounds better, respectively. While both races are important, Warnock's runoff against Loeffler has injected faith into the contest and prompted voters to look into the pastor's theological training, sermons, and ministry. Ladies and gentlemen, what should Christians in Georgia know about Warnock? Warnock has pastorized Ebenezer Baptist Church in Atlanta for the past 15 years. And previously pastored churches in New York and Maryland. Ebenezer is the same church where Martin Luther King Sr. served as a pastor for 40 years, where his son Martin Luther King Jr. served before leading the civil rights movements. I'm sure there's nothing strategic about working there, is there, Warnock, huh? Warnock is a graduate of the Union Theological Seminary in New York City, where he earned multiple graduate degrees, including a Master of Divinity, a Master of Philosophy, and a doctorate in philosophy. Ooh, he's educated, is he? Must be part of the plan to sell some books because of the formative nature of the theological training as well as Warnock's long tenure as a student at the school. It's very worth understanding a little bit about the seminary. All right, guys, let's understand about the seminary. Although Union maintains that it is grounded in the Christian tradition, the seminary abandoned any semblance of orthodoxy decades ago. In fact, the student population includes Muslims, Buddhists, Hindus, Unitarian Universalists, and those who identify as pagans. You know, I have nothing against different groups of people, but you can't be a Catholic school or a Christian school. I'm not saying you can't bring people in there. I'm not saying you don't want to be inclusive, but I mean, things have to have their own character and flavor, too, if you're going to keep them to their teachings. I know that diversity in business is a good thing and diversity in everything, is all good. But, why don't you go and ask a devout Muslim what they think about Catholic or Christian diversity coming and putting its flavor into their establishments? I don't believe that conversation will go very well. So all of these folks, they pretend like they're doing stuff to be inclusive, but really it's all part of their leftist liberal agenda. And there'll be plenty of videos we'll do talking about that kind of stuff. So student groups, I'm reading now, folks listening in listening world, other than folks watching in watching world. Student groups on campus include seminarians for reproductive justice. That's like a degree in underwater basket weaving, Queen Caucus, and a caucus for queer people of color, which, by the way, is like one of the top priorities on the Great Reset. When you go look up the World Economic Forum, it's like queer people of color have like the number 1 to 3 priority of fixing global warming in the world. For some reason, that has something to do with cooling the planet. I don't know. The school's liberal-leaning theology is not a recent trend. Rather, the seminary has been a bastion for liberal theology for over a century. In one well-known episode, German pastor Dietrich Bonhoeffer accepted sein teaching position at the Union Theological Seminary in 1939. But soon left in disgust. Excuse me, the German came out in me. There's no theology here, he wrote. No theology at all, excuse me again. They talk a blue streak without the slightest substantive foundation and with no evidence of any criteria. The students, on the average 25 to 30 years old, are completely clueless with respects to what dogmatics is really about, what theology is really about. They have no clue about the church. This is the German guy. He said, they talk a blue streak without the slightest substantive foundation and with no evidence and of any criteria. The students on the average 25 to 30 years old are completely clueless with respect to dogmatics is really about. Anyway, okay, I'm so sorry. I know. There's going to be like 40 comments now about how I need to shut up and not do that stuff. I get it. And it's not going to be about the accent. It's just going to be because it annoyed somebody. So for some of you laughing with me, I really appreciate. For the other ones that are all pissy because they don't like jokes with their information, because they don't know the difference between a podcast and an actual informative video, then I'm so sorry. You know, don't listen to Steven Crowder because he'll drive you crazy. Ben Shapiro, maybe. He doesn't have a lot of fluff in there. He's pretty, great information, just kind of dry. They become intoxicated with liberal and humanistic phrases. They laugh at the fundamentalists and yet basically are not even up to the level of the fundamentalists. All right. This is talking about the students at the school, folks, where Mr. Warnock went to. I don't know why his name slipped my brain for 2 seconds there. Anyway, let's keep reading. All right. In short, the seminary's progressive worldview, in contrary to scripture, and the school has been known to encourage and participate in heretical practices. All right. For example, during one chapel service, students confessed to plants. For those listening, I'm still here. I'm just staring off into the distance like, hello, darkness, my old friend. It's like going off in my head, and I'm just, God, that's where we are. If you've never seen the movie Idiocracy, just go watch Idiocracy, because plants, they want Brawndo, because it's what plants crave. And at chapel service, they got to confess to plants and find out exactly what they crave. Today in chapel, we confess to plants. If you've never seen Idiocracy, please go watch Idiocracy. My jokes, if they're going over your head, they really are funny once you watch the movie. It's called Idiocracy, and it's worth it. Just watch it. Just take a night and watch it with somebody you care about, preferably somebody who's not like 12 years old, because it's probably not good for them to watch whatsoever. But if you're an adult and you like humor, you want to laugh, watch Idiocracy, because this will be a whole lot funnier. Today in chapel, ladies and gentlemen, we confess to plants. Together, we held our grief, our joy, our regret, our hope, our guilt, our sorrow in prayer, offering them to the beings who sustain us, but whose gift we too often fail to honor. I don't know if you guys have ever seen the movie The Happening from M. Night Shyamalan, whatever. I always mess up his name. No offense to you, dude. I love your movies, but I'm sorry. I can't say your last name because I have a problem in my brain. Listen, guys, if the plants get mad enough at us, they'll release that toxin that makes us kill ourselves anyway. So, I mean, that's what they did in the movie The Happening. Other than that, what do you... September 17th, 2019, they spent the day confessing to plants. Let's move on. I'm sorry, guys. I loosened up for this. I'm really, I might be actually a little sleep deprived. I apologize, but... I felt it was good for the podcast for us to be a little loose, have a little humor, try to really understand some of this crap, because it really is mind-boggling how idiotic this stuff is. During another chapel service, a ritual to melting ice was performed. I think I know how that goes. I think the song went, let it go, let it go. I don't know. It might have gone something like that, but... And by the way, you're welcome. That song's going to be stuck in your head all day now if you have children. Merry Christmas. Christian political engagement, including on the part of pastors, is good and should be encouraged. However, it is critical that pastors and church leaders running for office align their political platforms with a biblical worldview, and I don't find anything different from that. I mean, pastors and church leaders, right? They're running for office. I would believe that it would be important to align their political views with their biblical views. Like, how can you be devoted to your religious beliefs but have completely different political beliefs? It just doesn't make sense. All right. Although Warnock is a pastor, his public statements make it clear that his theology and political views are not in step with a biblical worldview. For example, Scripture is unequivocally clear that the unborn are human persons whom God knows in the womb. I don't know how many of you have children, but when I look into my daughter's eyes, I believe that statement. All right? However, when responding to a reporter's questions about his stance on healthcare and abortion, Warnock said he believes abortion is a human right. Ladies and gentlemen, for me, quote, reproductive justice is consistent with my commitment to that. I believe unequivocally in a woman's right to choose, and I bet that includes all the way up to after the birth, since that's what a lot of these lefties believe in. Warnock has also made staunch statements concerning religious freedom and its specific relationship to LGBTQ issues. In an article for The Advocate, he wrote, quote, here's what I know from over 20 years as a Baptist pastor. While faith at its best can heal and bring us closer together, too often I've witnessed it used to justify injustice against women, minorities, and LGBTQ people. Faith wielded as a cudgel to harm our neighbor has no place in our pews, in our streets, and halls of Congress. And that's a misleading statement because, yes, I agree. It happens. People do use religion as an excuse to do horrible, horrible, dastardly things. But he uses it as an overviewing blanket statement to try and control, eventually have a religious control over the freedoms of people, what they believe, what they feel. If you are a devout Catholic, all right, you don't have to do anything to people in the LGBTQ community, excuse me. And I mean, you don't have to associate with them. I mean, that's your choice. And it's the choice of the LGBTQ community to not associate with other people. People have to respect each other's individual liberties and freedoms. I mean, I personally don't care what people do. I am not one to judge. I believe that's the man or woman upstairs' job for the PC version, if you want to say man or woman or whatever. But I believe that's God's job. Let's just put it like that. All right, folks, it's God's job to judge. It's not my job. So I'll do what I do in my home, teach my kids what I teach my things. And what you do in your home is your business. All right, ladies and gentlemen. But Warnock, he has a much more dastardly agenda. You see, his agenda becomes, how do I control what people feel, what people think, and what people do by taking control of religion and making them feel like hypocrites, ousting people, making them feel not welcome, basically torturing people into believing. It's a different type of psychological manipulation, folks. It might as well be propaganda from the Chinese. It's just religious propaganda, folks. All right? In other words, Warnock believes that when your biblical beliefs or personal faith contradict the beliefs and convictions of the culture, your biblical beliefs or personal faith must yield to the culture. All right, I have a personal relationship with God. I'm going to be honest with you. I'm not a devout person. I'm not perfect. I don't think any of us are perfect. Most of us aren't. We strive to be better people, better humans. We strive to follow in the grace of God and however we believe in that God. But that doesn't take second to what the latest trend is. That doesn't take second to Black Lives Matter telling me to kneel, because there's only one person I kneel in front of. And it's the person we were just talking about, not Black Lives Matter. It's God. And I know you guys feel that way too. You see, this man, he doesn't want you to bow to God. He wants you to bow to him. All right, ladies and gentlemen, evidently Warnock Warnock the Warlock, places a higher priority on making people feel comfortable than challenged and convicted. And such prioritization is a clear red flag and cause for concern for evangelical Christian voters. All right, ladies and gentlemen, this guy is out of his mind. He really, really, really is out of his mind. All right, I can prove it. Let's move on. Take a look. Radical liberal Raphael Warnock repeatedly refuses to answer if he supports court packing. All right, this is only going to get worse, ladies and gentlemen, but we're going to talk about the Supreme Court for a second here. So take a look. All right, here we are again with Warnock. All right, and he's being asked again and again about packing the Supreme Court. All right, that big issue that we keep hearing about the left wanting to do. And this guy sucks so much at talking that he literally just ignores it and tries to change the subject. Just listen to this. This is by Ryan Saavedra, I believe. This is from the Daily Wire, Mr. Shapiro's flagship there, the Daily Wire, December 6, 2020. Radical liberal Raphael Warnock repeatedly refuses to answer if he supports court packing. Georgia Democrat Senate candidate Raphael Warnock repeatedly refuses to answer during a debate on Sunday night whether he supports packing the U.S. Supreme Court. Supreme Court packing, which is something that the majority of Americans oppose, has gained steam among leftists in the Democrat Party over the past couple years since President Donald Trump was afforded the opportunity to appoint 3 Supreme Court justices. Warnock is running against Senator Kelly Loeffler, Republican out of Georgia, who repeatedly referred to him throughout the debate as a radical liberal Raphael Warnock. And again, I think my name of him is better, Warnock the Warlock, because he might actually be from hell. A moderator asked Warnock, quote, if Democrats do win control of the U.S. Senate, there will be pressure to increase the size of the U.S. Supreme Court. Would you support adding more justices to the Supreme Court to offset President Trump's recent appointments? Warnock completely ignored the question, claiming, quote, I want to point out, by the way, that Kelly Loeffler actually voted to fund the police, end quote. Quote, and I move all across the state. People aren't asking me about the courts and whether we should expand the courts. I know that's an interesting question for people inside the Beltway to discuss. What a piece of crap, by the way. He's talking about when he says that he's trying to refer to people as rednecks. Trust me. The moderator again asked Warnock to answer the question. Warnock, are you going to expand the Supreme Court? And he said, I'm really not focused on that. That's not even an answer, ladies and gentlemen. It's not even an answer. I'm just trying to give you an idea for who this guy is, all right? He's a hypocrite. All right. He's a sacrilegious reverend, I guess you would want to put it like that, who went to a super liberal school where they taught him to hate America, where he won't answer questions about packing the Supreme Court, where he also learned to hate the Jews. And that's where I'm taking this podcast, ladies and gentlemen. We are taking this train and we are, well, let's just call it a car, and we're going to steer it right off the cliff, right into this controversial topic. And it's what we're going to touch on for the rest of the episode. You guys are going to hear about election stuff all week. I wanted to give you a taste of that. But, you know, I want to give you the real deal. I want to give you the unfiltered. I want to give you my thoughts, my feelings. I want to put this news together for you and really paint the real picture that's happening using my skill set. And I'm not going to do that copying what other people are doing. And that's why you're getting unique. When you deal with me, when you deal with James Lane, when you deal with the American Reveille, you are going to get a new experience because I am literally inventing the flow of information that the American Reveille puts out from my hip. I'm using data, I'm using your feedback, but I'm using my feelings, my inspiration, my beliefs, my vision for the American Reveille, and my vision for the leadership that this country needs, and my vision on how we can bring patriots together into an amazing community. And I'm doing it in real time. That's why it's unique. That's why nobody else will be like the American Reveille. Nobody else will give you what I'm going to give you. And folks, you deserve it. Think about that. Look at all the stuff you're going through, and you will go through, and you have been through. Think about your life. You deserve it. This is your community, ladies and gentlemen. And in our community, we don't hide stuff. We don't protect feelings. We don't need safe spaces. We don't give hugs, although we do give like friendly hugs. I mean, you can give a hug. We're not like soulless. We like puppies and stuff. I like cats. We like kids here. We're not crazy people. I just mean, we don't live in a leftist, soft, padded, cushioned, PC world where reality doesn't exist. Because we're real Americans. We're patriots. We're tough. We're rugged. We'll go through it if we have to go through it. We'll slog through the mud. We'll do 100 dunes. We'll roll over 100 hills. We'll march until we're bloody in the feet. Because our country's at stake, ladies and gentlemen. Our children's futures are at stake. It is what it is. We don't have a choice at this point. And that's something that they'll never, ever understand on the left, folks. So let's venture into, I would like to call it unsafe territory, because we run the risk of being basically banned off of the video platform sites by touching upon these topics. These are the topics people, when you start getting into the religion stuff, the community guidelines get a little wishy-washy. So bear with me. You've heard me jibber-jabber long enough. Let's get into this article. This is Breitbart, folks. All right. This is Breitbart.com by Sean Moran, December 5th. Ossoff and Warnock campaign with a Democrat congressman who called Jews termites. God, that pisses me off. This guy. Georgia Senate Democrat candidate Raphael Warnock and Jon Ossoff will campaign Saturday, all right, with Rep. Hank Johnson, Democrat, Georgia, who in 2016 compared Israeli senators to termites. Warnock and Ossoff will attend a drive-in rally hosted by the Rockdale and Newton County Democrats with Johnson. Johnson's rally with Ossoff and Warnock raises questions about Johnson's controversial remarks, including his own commentary on Israeli settlers. At an event in 2016 sponsored by the Campaign to End the Israeli Occupation, which supports the boycott, divestment, and sanctions movement, BDS, Johnson said, quote, "There has been a steady stream, almost like termites can get into a residence and eat before you know that you've been eaten up and you fall in on yourself. There's been settlement activity that's marched forward with impunity at an ever-increasing rate to the point where it has become alarming." He's talking about Jews coming in and ruining the place. That's what he's saying. And that's bull. All right? I'm trying not to curse too much on this episode. That's bull. All right? It's come to the point that occupation with highways that cut through Palestinian land, with walls that go up, with the inability or the restriction, with the illegality of Palestinians being able to travel on those roads and those roads cutting off Palestinian neighborhoods from each other, and then with the building of walls and building of checkpoints that restrict the movement of Palestinians. This guy really doesn't know how to write or talk. Not the Breitbart guy, but the guy that they're quoting. We've gotten to the point where the thought of a Palestinian homeland gets further and further removed from reality. Well, I'm sorry, that's because in the Torah, in the ancient holy books, and even in the Bible, the homeland of the Israeli people is Jerusalem and Israel and that whole region. We've worked on things. We've given them some stuff. They've have some land. People are all pissy about it. I'm sorry, but the left loves the Palestinians. The right loves the Israelis, and that just is what it is. Any leftist that claims to love Israel really hasn't paid attention to their party as of late, folks. Johnson also said that Jewish people also frequently steal land and property from Palestinians. That's nice. Quote, "You see one home after another being appropriated by Jewish people who come in and claim that land just because someone didn't spend the night there," Johnson said. He added, "The home of the Palestinian ancestors, they lived there for generations, becomes an Israeli home and a flag goes up." Johnson, nobody remembers history. Nobody thinks about the hundreds and thousands of years, the wars, the Israeli people losing their homeland multiple times. Nobody takes that into consideration. Everybody's so short-sighted on the left. Johnson also compared Israeli Defense Minister Avigdor Lieberman to President Donald Trump. Quote, "The fact is, the Israeli government, which is the most right-wing government ever to exist in the state of Israel in its history, the most right-wing government. You get a guy like Trump, who's now the Minister of Defense in Israel, calling the shots. These people are idiots." This is obviously somebody who doesn't like Donald Trump, who quoted that, or who said that, and it was quoted. But this is a ridiculous guy, and he is campaigning, all right, with the Warlock, all right, with Ossoff, all right. They don't care. They might as well be AOC, Rashida Tlaib, Ilhan Omar, all of these folks that hate Jews, these anti-Semitic people that just see the Jews as part of the Western culture and want it torn to shreds because they want socialism, ladies and gentlemen. That's what they want. They want the Great Reset. They want capitalism to fall. They hate us, ladies and gentlemen. These are people that were brought up in a new world of progressivism where they pretended to be progressive, but were actually being taught basically the foundations of Nazism. Definitions have changed, folks. And people weren't paying attention when they were teaching these people. And now they've infiltrated into our government and into our businesses. Ladies and gentlemen, Democrats do not like Israel. Folks, this is from November 17th, 2019. This isn't new, ladies and gentlemen. All right. It's not new at all. This is an opinion article from the New York Post by Carol Markowitz from November 17th, 2019. And I still can't comprehend how I have Jewish friends who won't vote anything but Democrat and literally live like an ostrich with their head in the sand. I mean, I can comprehend it. I get it. They've been emotionally hijacked. Everybody's been brainwashed. These people that didn't have any sense to look anywhere else from news have been hypnotized by the communist news network, the MSDNCs of the world. All of these fake news outlets have taken our friends, our families, our loved ones, and brainwashed them. Look, one last thing on Warnock the Warlock. All right. I hate the fact that we have to vote for Purdue after the crap he talked. But I get it, because even with the cheating, we still need an overwhelming show of numbers because the greater good's at hand. The sanctity of the Supreme Court is at stake. I get that. All right. So I just wanted to lay out what a piece of crap Warnock is. I really think, I mean, like if anybody, if you could compare somebody to being demonic, right? Somebody who takes up the garb of religion and then plays like a two-faced game. You can't have one and the other, ladies and gentlemen. You can't have your cake. You can't have the pie. You can't have it. You got to pick one. All right. You can't just sit here and say, yeah, I'm a reverend. Yeah, I'm religious, but I also believe in full-term abortion. The whole thing is ludicrous. It's literally turning definitions upside down. The world is upside down. Left is right. Right is down. Down is up. Purple is green. And the sky is falling. The sky is falling. But it really isn't. It's confusion tactics, ladies and gentlemen. Confusion tactics that an enemy is using to keep us paralyzed and isolated. So you have to see through that crap. Folks, you got to see through it. It's a tactic. It's part of a strategy. See through it. And a way to see through it is to really know who the Democrats are and what we're dealing with. So without further ado, Democrats to Israel, go to hell. Last week, Israel once again faced a barrage of rockets from Gaza, while most of the mainstream Democrat candidates whistled and looked away. Remember, this is November 17th, 2019. Candidates don't have to comment on every event happening around the world, but the silence of much of the Democratic field feels like more than passing disinterest. And when Vice President Joe Biden offered even a bland message of support for Israel that would have been unremarkable a few years ago, he got massive pushback from the left on Twitter. And by the way, isn't it amazing that nobody actually looks at people anymore? They just take their advice from the Twitter analytics. Absolutely insane. Really, really dumb move on these people's part. They really think they're being really awesome business people staring at the analytics, but their analytics are screwy because they're not based on reality. They're based on Twitter world. And it's those activists on Twitter, I'm reading again for those who are listening, and in the campus fever swamps who shape the progressive conversation on Israel. It's terrifying. In Thursday's New York Times, Blake Flayton, a self-described gay abortion rights advocate and environmentalist. I think I want to be a ferret with an El Camino. I self-identify as a ferret driving an El Camino with size 14 pro wrestling boots on while drinking a 6-pack of Pabst Blue Ribbon. That's what I identify. Anyway, Blake Flayton, a self-described gay abortion rights advocate and environmentalist, wrote of the torrent of abuse he gets at his university because he's a Zionist, and how campus rallies about fair wages for custodial staff turn into Israel hate fests. He confessed that the progressives like him are afraid to speak up about it. We often refrain from calling out anti-Semitism on our side for fear of our political bona fides being questioned, or worse, losing friends or being smeared as things we most revile: racist, white supremacist, colonialist, and so on. Let me put this into perspective for you, you friggin' idiots. Let me put this into perspective. If you don't have the balls, man or woman, you can be a woman and have balls. It's an expression, so don't get your pantalones in a wad there. All right, ladies and gentlemen, if you, ladies and gentlemen, all right, if you don't have the balls to stand up to anti-Semitism, to stand up to racism, real racism, if you don't have the balls, if you're that much of a coward because you're scared people won't like you, you're not worth crap to me. I don't have time for you. You're not even a human. You are less than dirt. Okay, folks? Because it's people like that turned a blind eye and let the jackboots of the Nazi revolution take hold in Germany. It's people like that allowed millions of Jews to go to the gas chambers and millions others to die needlessly in detention camps, ladies and gentlemen. People that are afraid to be called out for the outlier that they are. So to you folks, I have no pity. I have no sympathy. I am sorry, but I am not sorry, folks. And if you don't like that about me, I'm sorry. There's other channels out there. Deal with it. But I have a feeling that a lot of you like that about me. Look, guys, the Democratic 2020 field is a lefty college campus writ large. Even when Democrats try to confront anti-Semitism, their message gets muddled because they have to be very careful not to show too much support for Israel. Again, no sympathy. You know, like they said in the movie Major Payne, you can find my sympathy, lefties. If you want to know where it is, you can find my sympathy in the dictionary, somewhere between shit and syphilis, ladies and gentlemen. That's where you can find my sympathy, in the dictionary between shit and syphilis. I missed that quote. Consider Bernie Sanders' essay last week on how to fight anti-Semitism at the Jewish Currents website. It offered no instruction on actually fighting anti-Semitism, but instead alternated between criticizing Israel and pretending anti-Semitism doesn't exist on the left. Sanders limited all discussion of anti-Semitism to fringe white nationalists. He even blamed regular attacks on Jews in Brooklyn on the ideology of whites-only America. In reality, as Armin Rosen reported in an expose for Tablet, the perpetrators, who have been recorded on CCTV cameras, were overwhelmingly black and Hispanic. We should all rail against white supremacists, but Sanders doesn't dare diagnose, much less try to cure, the disease of anti-Semitism spreading amongst his hard-left comrades. Sanders also lent credence to the Palestinian narrative about Israel's supposedly sinful birth, acknowledging these realities he lectured does not delegitimize Israel any more than acknowledging the sober facts of America's own founding delegitimizes the United States. That's the best impression anyone's ever going to do on Bernie Sanders. Kiss my butt if you don't think so. Wrong. America doesn't have to defend its very existence. More to the point, Palestinians could have had their own state their own state side by side with Israel from day one. They chose to spurn peace, then wage decades of relentless eliminationist war. Ladies and gentlemen, then again, the wing of the American left that Sanders represents has absorbed the eliminationist mentality. Palestine will be free from the river to the sea isn't just something Hamas fanatics scream. It was chanted at the Democratic Socialists of America's National Convention at the University of Illinois in 2017. Remember when the riots were happening and they were yelling death to America on the streets in New York? Those were American kids yelling death to America. And in 2017, in the University of Illinois, at the Democratic Socialists of America National Convention, they chanted, "Palestine will be free from the river to the sea." The river is Jordan. The sea is the Mediterranean. If Palestine were free from the river to the sea, then there would be no Israel. They want the devastation, destruction, and removal of Israel from this earth, ladies and gentlemen. Mainstream Democrats rolled over to the far left so quickly on Israel that it's hard to imagine them returning to a sane place. Jews who vote for Democrats in overwhelming numbers need to finally wake up to the reality that their party despises the world's sole Jewish state. And if you are a Jew and you vote Democrat and you won't do research, you don't want to look it up, you don't believe it, you won't even check, then I'm sorry, but I don't think you're a Jew. I'm sorry. I don't think you're anything. I don't think you have character of conviction. I don't think you have a soul half the time because you're not willing to do the basic action of being a human and showing courtesy to another human by considering their ideas and considering that they might know something you don't. So if you know everything, then you, whether you're a Jew, whether you're not a Jew, whether you're anybody on the left, if you won't take anybody's facts, if you won't take their knowledge into consideration, you won't do a little homework, if you know everything, then you can know everything all by yourself in the corner like a little child. And that's what we're going to do with you, lefties. You're going to sit in the corner by yourself like a little child. Criticizing any country or its leadership should be fair game always, to be sure, even when it's our ally. But what's disturbing about such episodes and the poll numbers they mirror was summed up in a recent New York Times subheadline. And this headline stated, "President Trump's hawkish support of Israel has led many Democrats to question the United States' relationship with one of its closest allies." How can you be too close with Israel? If Trump is for something, in other words, then Democrats have to be against it. That's a true statement. All right, ladies and gentlemen, that's absurd and childish, and it's based on a lie. It's a lie to say Democrats and mainstream liberals are now turning against Israel. That turn happened under the Obama administration. See, I really wanted to read you guys this article because it's very good. Now mainstream Democrats are struggling just to beat back the tide of overt Jew hatred in their midst among fellow Democrats. Remember, this is November 2019, ladies and gentlemen, and they're doing a feeble job of it. Either the Democrat candidates are too afraid of the hard leftist base to stick up for Jews and their national homeland, or they don't want to. Or they don't want to, ladies and gentlemen. Either way, it's not leadership. That's not what's happening. Folks, the left has abandoned Israel. The left has abandoned any teachings of God whatsoever. Ladies and gentlemen, I've said it 3 times, by the way, ladies and gentlemen, I apologize. Anti-Semitic Democrats, all right? This is an important article. I know I got a little quiet, but, oh my God, this stuff really pisses me off, all right? So, I love history. I've studied a ton of history. In fact, my bachelor degree is a bachelor degree in history. All right. I can teach history right now if I wanted to. I have the credentials at least to do so. And when I see things being repeated from the past, and I see things I've read about only in the most horrible of books you could imagine, that spoke about the most horrible of tortures you could imagine, when I see these patterns being repeated in our reality, it chills me to the bone. And it seems like nobody's listening. Nobody sees it. I know you know how that feels. But this was a great article I read from Front Page Mag. All right. This is from Daniel Greenfield. It's the last article we're going to do in the podcast. We're going to wrap up the podcast with this article and kind of put it together because I wanted to give you a good brief update on the Georgia fraud, because there's just so much going on, guys. So you got an update on the Georgia fraud, the Suitcase-Gate, and all the craziness that's going on with that. I really drilled down on what a sick, twisted, evil piece of crap Mr. Warnock the Warlock is. Excuse me. We got all through that, and we segued into Warnock and Ossoff campaigning with the Jew haters, the guy that called Jews termites, and really pulled it into this recent and really not recent, just recently uncovered, but long-lasting, deep-seated, decades-old hatred that the left really has for the Jewish people. And I kind of wanted to put that together because I've seen the stories from New York fade away, for the most part, about the Jews that are being attacked by Cuomo and DiBlasio. And I wanted to build this whole episode up into this article because when I read this article, it blew me away. And I really thought it would be a great way to tie all of this together. It's called Anti-Semitic Democrats Blame Orthodox Jews for the Coronavirus. There is no truer statement in 2020, no statement that defines a crossroad, a terrifying historical crossroad. I really appreciate you guys, by the way, sitting through this entire, what are we at? Almost an hour and a half now, almost. I appreciate you guys sitting through that to get to this point. Anti-Semitic Democrats, okay? We could just take anti-Semitic away if you wanted. We could just say Democrats blame Orthodox Jews for the coronavirus. We can change that to German citizens blame Orthodox Jews for starvation. We can change that to German citizens blame Orthodox Jews for lack of income, lack of jobs, lack of security. You know, eventually, when you blame Jews enough for something, somebody comes along and starts carting them away. Okay? They start carting people away of all different shapes, sizes, colors, ethnicities. And later we find out that millions of them were murdered. You dumb sons of gosh. Oh, you know, this stuff really gets under my skin, folks. All right. Cuomo and DiBlasio blame the Jews to distract from their failures and crimes. This is a biased article and good because it's accurate. It's true. Screw the left. Screw their anti-Semitism and their real bigotry. They want to say that we're racist. They can kiss my ass. They're the racists. They just changed the definitions around so it could suit them and their freaking agenda. Daniel Greenfield, a Shillman Journalism Fellow at the Freedom Center, is an investigative journalist and writer focusing on the radical left and Islamic terrorism. Guys, we are going to get through this article right now. I have to say to the Orthodox community tomorrow, if you're not willing to live with these rules, then I'm going to close the synagogues. Governor Andrew Cuomo told religious Jews. His basis for the decree was a photo of mourners who weren't practicing social distancing at a funeral. But the photo of a crowd of Orthodox Jews on Cuomo's slide was from 2006. It was a very different message than Cuomo's condemnation of bigotry when he had insisted there is zero evidence that people of Asian descent bear any additional responsibility for the transmission of the coronavirus. The new message is, don't blame the Asians, guys. Blame the Jews. They did go to a funeral in 2006. Cuomo was picking up where Mayor Bill de Blasio had left off in his infamous tweet targeting Orthodox Jews. Quote, my message to the Jewish community, this is from that big walking turd, Bill de Blasio. My message to the Jewish community and all communities is this simple. The time for warnings has passed. The New York City leftist boss had raged, and we know what he's talking about because just recently he had police who defy their oath to the Constitution and obeyed orders basically plant a sting operation and drag a Staten Island bar owner from his home. Ladies and gentlemen, not his home, his place of business. Might as well have been his home. I don't know if he lives there, but anyway, just imagine getting put in jail for trespassing on your own property. That does make you a New York City leftist boss, in my opinion. Medieval bigots blamed the Black Plague on Jews poisoning wells. Modern Democrats blame the coronavirus on the Jews. Despite the plague of media narratives accompanied by photos of Hasidic Jews praying or mourning, there's as little evidence for the latter as for the former. Cuomo's threat to synagogues was prompted by a supposed resurgence of the virus. DiBlasio had already announced that the spike in the targeted areas would lead to school and business closures, except that a number of those areas have African American, Latino, or Asian majorities. But instead, Democrats and the media have focused on the Jewish areas. That's very funny. That's not equal treatment, is it? And even those Orthodox Jew areas are far from a homogeneous monocultural community. Hasidic Jews, a subset of Orthodox Jews, may stand out, as so do the Amish. So-called Hasidic neighborhoods in Brooklyn are actually made up of the usual New York mix of African Americans, Latinos, and assorted immigrant groups, including Muslim immigrants. Coronavirus deaths among Asians in New York have been twice as high among whites and approaching 5 times as high among Latinos and African Americans. New York City's worst death rates were not in Borough Park or Williamsburg, but in a Bronx neighborhood in East New York, in Flushing, Queens, in Far Rockaway, and in Brighton Beach. None of those are Hasidic neighborhoods. Only one has a significant Orthodox population, nor are the highest positive rates in Orthodox or Hasidic areas. You have to get through 5 Queens neighborhoods before making it to a Borough Park, and most Brooklyn neighborhoods, except East New York, are far below Queens and Bronx neighborhoods when it comes to cases per population. Borough Park is only the 49th highest zip code in actual mortality rates, and Williamsburg is in 79th place. And yet, the instance that the outbreak is an Orthodox Jew problem is ubiquitous. It pops up in the media and in rhetoric by top Democrats that stigmatizes religious Jews for the virus. The Democrats who rose to denounce scapegoating of Asians have joined the racism. The media pumps out stories blaming the outbreak on Orthodox Jews with a cheerful disregard for facts or basic urban geography. The Associated Press rolled out an entire story blaming the outbreak of coronavirus infections on Orthodox Jews, but the only actual neighborhood that it offers statistics for is the Gravesend section of Brooklyn, a mostly immigrant area that is not home to a Hasidic community and whose Orthodox Jews are Syrian refugees, but is mostly associated with Italian Americans with large populations of Chinese and Russian immigrants. Folks, this is what real racism looks like. What we've seen in New York with DiBlasio and Cuomo, where we've seen them with the police fighting with the Jews. We've seen that. We're watching New York die, ladies and gentlemen. That's what you're watching. New York City is dying. All right? And DiBlasio and Cuomo poisoned it. And they did it on purpose. So you see, all of this fits in, all right? All of this fits in with the Great Reset. All of it fits in. The racism. The cleansing that they want to do with the Jews. And you know where they're going with all of this. History tells us so, ladies and gentlemen. And the Great Reset, which you can read all about on the World Economic Forum's website, is all about that. Put 2 and 2 together, ladies and gentlemen. It's not rocket science. It's not conspiracy theory. There's no wires and pins behind me and a bunch of things that make no sense connecting. It's obvious. It's absolutely obvious. And it's horrifying that it happens, and it is happening, in American streets, ladies and gentlemen. Let's keep reading for a second, all right? The media won't stop claiming that Orthodox Jews spread the virus because they make a convenient boogeyman for its hipster readers who despise traditional Judeo-Christian religions. The New York Times, which has run the most articles blaming Orthodox Jews for the outbreak, has linked them to cultural lefty hobgoblins. I like that word, hobgoblins, like opponents of vaccines and Trump supporters. Quote, New York City threatens Orthodox Jewish areas on virus, but Trump's impact is seen One New York Times headline read, "The power of others or othering is that all your hatreds and fears can be projected onto those who are different, and despise all the politically correct lectures on race and hate. The Times needs its own others to hate. The most obvious tell is that when the Times writes about any other group, it quotes members of the community. But when it writes about Hasidic Jews, it turns to the opponents and critics of the community who are happy to nod along with the negative coverage, to its brainwashed lemmings. That's why a rise in positive test results in a Chinese area isn't a story. A rise in a black area is a story about racism and inequity. Not inequality, folks, inequity. And a rise in an Orthodox Jewish area is a story about ignorant, religious fanatics who support Trump and insist on praying and don't trust the medical experts. What a narrative, ladies and gentlemen. What a narrative that they've crafted. What a spider web. What a web has been weaving. I guess it would be weaving. Woven. There we go. Excuse me. I had to go back to 6th grade for a minute. What a web that has been woven, ladies and gentlemen, or wove. The Orthodox Jewish community has suffered from the virus, as have many other groups. It's no more at fault for it than they are. It isn't unique because more Orthodox Jews have come down with the virus, but because they make a convenient scapegoat for the failures of Democratic officials like Cuomo and DiBlasio, for the blatant flouting of their rules by rioters and hipsters. Hasidic Jews in particular are stereotypically other, with strange garb, incomprehensible beliefs, accents, large families, long beards. But they're white enough that hating them is socially acceptable for progressives who can act out their xenophobia without feeling guilty. I know I'm doing a lot of reading, ladies and gentlemen, but this is an excellent, excellent article, and it puts so much into perspective. It goes to show and detail and map out why the left hates the Jews, how it shows where the evidence is. You can see all of it right here. And this is recent. This is just from the other month. You saw it on TV. If you didn't see it on TV, I'm sure you saw it on Twitter or on the social media, on Parler. There was a lot of banned videos that came out that showed the Jews being harassed, beaten, sprayed down by riot police. I mean, stuff that we would have never imagined seeing on American streets. It's quite horrifying. Even before the pandemic, the media was eager to provide a platform for every special interest out to bash Orthodox Jews. From the Yafed campaign, I guess that's Yaft or Yaft, or probably just YAFFED campaign by leftists against religious Jewish schools, to opponents of circumcision, to animal rights cranks campaigning against kosher meats. But you can't campaign against kosher meats too long, because then that offends the Muslim people. The new coronavirus anti-Semitism relies on the same stereotypes and slurs. Orthodox Jews are ignorant, superstitious, flout authority, and need to be saved from their backwards ways. These are the progressive prejudices that permeate the media's coverage of Orthodox Jews, and it's part of the reason why Orthodox Jews are a Republican constituency in presidential elections. Bigotry isn't just about the pleasures of hate. It's how those in power redirect blame for their crimes and failures, and a means for those who hate to gain a false sense of power and control. Blaming the upsurge on an outside group creates a false sense of security for everyone else. And when it's no longer possible to pretend that the upsurge is limited to Orthodox Jews, then they can still be blamed for having caused it with their weddings, funerals, and prayers. Best of all, none of the newfound bigots will blame Governor Cuomo or Mayor Bill de Blasio, the two top Democrats who mishandled the pandemic in the worst ways possible, while spewing lies, excuses, and smears at their serial press conferences. They won't be held accountable. In fact, ladies and gentlemen, you and I both know that Mr. Cuomo just went on a book tour. He went on a book tour. And what happened to his brother, the Communist News Network host that got caught breaking the COVID rules again and again? Nobody hears about that because nobody cares. Nobody cares. They can do whatever they want. They're rich. They're untouchable. They're coastal elites, ladies and gentlemen. And that's why, quote, every time things get worse, Cuomo and de Blasio will do something that people have done through the ages. They'll blame the Jews, ladies and gentlemen. That article puts it together better than I could have written it. I might have been able to write a pretty good article on it, but when I was doing my research for this podcast and I came across it, I said, man, I got to mostly just read that and elaborate on a couple things because it puts a ton into perspective. And this podcast wasn't meant to detail a 104-page legal document. It wasn't meant to get really down and dirty into the Federalist Papers or describe something. It was really about updates. It was really about putting together this story, about understanding what's actually going on, about looking into Georgia a little, getting an update, getting that good feeling about what's happening with the fraud there, knowing it's being caught, knowing it's being persecuted. At least we're persecuting solutions up to the Supreme Court level and getting a good feeling about that because there are things to feel good about. Things are moving in the right direction. It was about exposing Warnock the Warlock for the wolf in sheep's clothing that he actually is and showing his connection to hate for Israel, hate for the Jewish people. Folks, and really an overwhelming Democratic hate, a left-wing Democrat hate of Jews in general, which is misleading an entire group of Jewish people in this country that still vote for them. And they really need to wake up. They really need to wake up and see and research and take a look at what their party believes anymore. Because I promise, if you're one of those people and you look close enough, you'll find that the Democratic Party does not represent you anymore. So, ladies and gentlemen, it's Monday. It's the 7th. We are one day before Safe Harbor Day. Like I said, don't get stressed. Don't get worried. Good things are coming. Good things have been happening. I know that this is dragging out, that it's real hard to deal with, that some folks are having an emotionally tough time, but I need you in this fight. I need you shoulder to shoulder with me. I need you to stand up straight, stand tall, put your chin up. All right. I need you to wipe the dust off, pull the boots up. I know AOC hates that term, pull your bootstraps up, but I need you, ladies and gentlemen, patriots, brothers and sisters. I need you to pull your bootstraps up and be strong. All right. We're still holding the line. We're still in this fight and we will prevail. Folks, thank you so much for listening. If you're on Apple Podcasts, please give me a 5-star rating. I put a lot of effort into these. I put a lot of work into these. I want to spread the truth. And by giving me a 5-star rating, by giving us a fair review and writing some stuff down, it triggers the Apple algorithm. It moves us up the charts and more patriots like yourself get to see what we do. If you're watching on YouTube, please hit the subscribe button. Please hit the notification bell. You will not find a channel anything like mine. We are unique. We are rocking. We are rolling. We are ready for the fight against the left. And folks, if you really, really want to help out, take a couple moments. Go to www.americanreveille.com. That's REVEILLE. You can go up to the top and hit the donation tab. Anything, $1, $5,000, a quarter, $2, whatever you want to give. If you have a little bit to spare and you could give to the American Reveille movement, we're going to take that money and reinvest it into this organization so we can keep growing it, keep building it up, and eventually provide livelihoods for people. We need to upgrade these operations, get better software, better computers, better equipment, because it is falling apart and I am paying for it all out of my 9-to-5 job's paycheck. So, folks, if you got that, please help us out. If not, please just share it. Just share the episode. That's all you got to do. Like it, comment on it, echo us, share us, talk about us. That's all you got to do. That's all I'm asking you. I don't need you to scrape into the bottom to help out. I don't want that. I want you to be happy, be healthy, do what you got to do, and take care of your family. All right? So all I ask from you, ladies and gentlemen, is to just spread the word about the American Reveille, because we are itching to make a difference and we can't do it without you. So folks, thank you so much for listening. I hope you enjoy your Monday. I hope you have a kick-ass week. You really nail it down and do what you got to do. Get your stuff done and enjoy your time on this planet. And folks, please Pay attention to the Parler at The James Lane. That's the American Reveille's website on Parler. Not website, but it's our social media platform there, our presence on Parler. It's at The James Lane. That's for the American Reveille. That's us. That's me right here. That's where you'll find all of our content releases, our videos, our articles. Everything will be announced on there, and it happens all week long. Thank you so much. I'm happy to have you, and I will see you next time. Bye. Oh, good. I am glad you're still here, comrade. I need you to do me big favor. I need you to go and hit this like button right here. I need you to hit this share button right here. And most important of all, I need you to come up here and hit the subscribe button. Yes, you have to hit the subscribe button and subscribe to American Reveille YouTube channel. Good. And then, comrade, when you're done, go up to the Parler. All right, I need you to find the Parler. Go into your App Store, your Google Play Store, and find Parler, Parler. Okay, Parler. And when you get on the Parler, either in the app or www.parler.com, you come and find at The James Lane. The James Lane, the owner and the president of the American Reveille. Hey, ladies and gentlemen, thank you this so much, and I look forward to building gigantic, united, right-wing community with you.